Baton Rouge has been on edge ever since police shot to death 37-year-old Alton Sterling nearly 2 weeks ago outside a convenience store. Mr. Sterling was black. The two officers who tried to arrest him are white. Police said officers were responding to a call regarding an armed man and said Mr. Sterling was armed. Yesterday's gunman, Mr. Long, was black. Two of the cops killed were white. The other was black. President Obama offered remarks from the White House.
We don't need inflammatory rhetoric. We don't need careless accusations thrown around to score political points or to advance an agenda.
Analysis now from Alex Del Carmen, head of the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth, Texas. Alex, how do you see this?
Well, I'm actually a trainer of law enforcement, but I can tell you that one of the things that really concerns me right now is if this is a new normal for the law enforcement community. And quite frankly, I was hoping that the tragedy in Dallas was going to be an isolated event, that we would not be talking about this for perhaps a couple of years. And now what we find ourselves is that in the past 2 weeks or so, there's been more tragedy associated with law enforcement than any time in the history of the United States absent 9/11. And so what this shows me is that this may be the new normal for us, which is very, very sad and alarming.
It's almost impossible to believe. The new normal, right? I mean, come on.
A new normal, yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, if this is going to be the normal way of doing business for law enforcement, we are in for a very difficult year ahead. And quite frankly, what makes me nervous is the fact that in the back head of the law enforcement community, next time they make a traffic stop, next time they talk to someone in what may appear to be a routine in exchange between the citizen and a law enforcement officer, the officer may be really, really nervous about how they approach that citizen.
Cop friend of mine says he's fearful that a civil war is unfolding. Is that too much, or is that in the ballpark of what's happening?
It's actually, there is a danger that we may be headed in that direction. And I'm typically not an alarmist or someone that highlights that kind of trend based on two incidents. But I tell you, this makes me very, very nervous that this may be the new normal.
All right, so explain, I guess, maybe some of the thinking here, say, from the criminal side. I mean, is there... And I may be simplifying. Doesn't there have to be something wrong with somebody who wants to do this kind of harm?
Absolutely. I mean, most of us would not even think of harming someone else in any circumstance, except perhaps when our lives are in danger. Imagine what it's like for someone to actually prepare and to carry out an attack against an innocent police officer. I mean, you have to have just a very different mindset and perhaps not even be considered to be normal in a psychiatric sense to carry out such an act.
We're speaking with Dr. Alex Del Carmen. He's the head of the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth, Texas, talking about this latest police ambush in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, in which 3 law enforcement officers were killed. What about the conversation that needs to be had at this point? We hear a lot about that, but what are there next steps that can be effective, or is just nobody who wants to carry out damage listening?
We have to get real. And what I mean by that is we can't leave it up to the politicians to begin to establish the dialogue, because that in the past has never worked. And so what we really need to do is bring our communities together and talk to the law enforcement community, engage in a dialogue with the minority community, and get people to really understand each other's perspectives. What I fear the most is that more innocent people are going to die before someone, that is perhaps a national leader, a local leader, takes it upon himself or herself to really engage in this dialogue. But that needs to start now.
A friend of mine who happens to be black, I was discussing this with him over the weekend, feels that at the very, very core of all this is education, whether it's how somebody is brought up, whether or not the families are teaching, say, the right things, or they're going to school and doing things like their homework. I mean, are we talking about people's lack of education that leads to something like this?
Gordon, I'm actually a first-generation legal immigrant to the United States, and I will tell you, as a member of the Hispanic community, I don't speak on behalf of the Hispanic community, but as someone that actually came to this country early on in my life, absolutely, education is crucial. And education, by the way, on both sides, not only for the community, yes, but also for law enforcement as well.
What's being said, I guess, in your circle, say, of law enforcement that's not being said publicly in the media? Anybody missing a particular point here on all this?
I think most of the folks in law enforcement right now our hearts are broken for those families and for those children that are not going to have a dad in the coming years because of what happened. And in addition to that, I think a lot of us are nervous about what the implications of these acts are coming up in the, this week with the Republican convention and next week with the Democratic convention. I mean, a lot of us are scratching our heads trying to hope for the best, but bracing ourselves for the worst.
Thanks, Alex. Alex Del Carmen, head of the School of Criminology, Criminal Justice, and Strategic Studies at Tarleton State University in Fort Worth, Texas.
America's First News is online all the time. Follow us on Twitter @ThisMorningShow. Like us on Facebook or send us an email thismorning@compassmedianetworks.com.